All right, Harry. We all know the book in the Bible, Daniel, and how he was in the lion's den and whatnot. But there's a little chapter in there. It's about his three friends. Maybe you can give us some background on that.
Yeah, so the story of the three Jewish friends of Daniel that had been deported to Babylon by King Nebuchadnezzar the first time he invaded Israel. And in chapter 2, Daniel and his friends escaped death when Daniel interpreted the king's dream. And that's how it all got started. The king was so astonished when Daniel told him his dream and interpreted that Daniel, being only likely a teenager and barely knowing the language yet, that the king got off his throne and bowed humbly before Daniel. That's just a really interesting story because he was just so impressed. He made Daniel governor of the province of Babylon and leader of all the wise men. And he was just a young man. His three friends were made administrators of the province of Babylon. So they got good jobs too, because they were all in on this. Chapter 3, King Nebuchadnezzar has a new project. He built this new golden god statue, 9 feet wide and 90 feet high. They're really, really proud of it. And now it was dedication time. Everybody commanded to attend and worship. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego got their big new jobs in chapter 2. So now they had to attend the king's functions. That's part of what promotion turns out to be. So king made a rule. It's either worship or burn. They did not bow to the king's statue. The king says, well, I'll give you one more chance. He says, we don't need a new chance. We're not going to bow to your king. We serve the God of heaven. So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew their blessings came from God alone, and their allegiance was to God alone. The king was furious. Into the furnace, he heated it up even more. So he had them tied up like cordwood and tossed like logs into the fire. The people doing the tossing, the strongest men in the army, died of the heat throwing them in. The king was momentarily pleased. But then he saw four men walking in the fire, three men plus an angel. And then can you read verse 26 on in that chapter, please?
Yeah, it says, Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He responded and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here. Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on the bodies of these men, nor was their hair on their head singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angels and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielded up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God. Isn't that beautiful?
Yeah, no kidding. And so the king was an honest man, he promoted them. Verse 30, why don't you read 30 also while you're
All
at it?
right, sounds good. Give me a second here. It says this. It says, Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon.
Yeah, so he promoted them, and he made a proclamation that there was a God that this God was that God of heaven. He was so proud of these men and that God. So and he boasted about their God, and he loved to be invested. That was so special to me, is that how he realized that that these men were more capable and more honorable than he'd ever seen before. And he, even though they defied the king, he was willing to honor them. And they were offered, so the king of all the kings, Nebuchadnezzar was a king of the earth at that time, and yet these people were willing to stand up to him. They offered to die. And 20 minutes were well spent, if you think about it, just willing to die. I know that if I had been there, I wouldn't have bowed, but I would have tied my shoes or something, not appropriate, to be
It's
willing to
amazing though, right, Harry? When we think about it, like just when we fully devote ourselves to God, How I
Yeah,
like the proverb where it says, "Lean not on your own understanding, but acknowledge Him in all your ways, and He will make straight your path." And we've seen, and I know you've read many books on the Christian faith of people who are just trusted in God and what God
yeah.
would do for them, and how every time it always worked out okay for them in the end.
Totally, totally. And this happens even in our day, that I remember the story about the Bible smuggler, taking one Bible into Russia, you could have got thrown in jail, and he was taking carloads across every time, never got caught. Many, many, many loads of Bibles, and trust in God. And God, they just prayed. It says, "You're the one that opens people's eyes. Well, can you please close them for 20 minutes while we go through the border?" And it worked. And so trusting, yeah, still works today. God is great. His will happen regardless of the time and the location. And yeah, we just have to be willing to trust.
Amen. Thanks a lot for that, Harry.
Thank you.